Welcome, we are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we did have a pretty interesting comment forwarded to us about information and parroting. Parroting is not truth seeking, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, no harm done, but we believe that you could term parroting in this sense, in regards to that comment, as quoting, okay, which is basically repeating information that someone else has discovered or been discovered before they discovered it, and they've just rediscovered it, made it known. So we, the Ministry of the Real Truth, are not parroting, we're just quoting or paraphrasing what the other person has discovered and passing it on to you, especially the religious, who we know as fact. We've come to realise that we'll all be duped with these new, modern, Americanised English Bible versions, etc. So we listen to people who make claims of established facts, the evidence that supposedly has proven itself evident, that what they're saying is irrefutable, infallible, that the original authors are the same, all this sort of stuff. Doing the personal research, study, digging behind the scenes of these people historically, their lives, etc., to find out if they're the real deal or they're involved in something sinister, because some of them might be atheists, agnostic atheists. They have a despite of God, right, in the scriptures. They might have a hidden motive, hidden agenda, or they're being, like what you call paid shills, being paid to get in there and break down anyone who gets close to a truth, dissuade people, right, try to convince people, oh, it's all rubbish, it's all a fairy tale, etc., etc., which is a common thing these days. So we, looking at this particular video, the origins of Britain and the Welsh Egyptian mystery, Ross Broadstock and Alan Wilson, megalithomania, because what they are saying within this video is that the Welsh, obviously spoken by the people of Wales, is very, very close to the original ancient, very old Assyrian language. It has its roots in that particular language, and it's an easier way to learn to translate the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs in a matter of months, or days, or months, or something, rather than many, many years. Someone told us about the Thracians and how they predated Egypt and all this sort of stuff, but listen to this video. That can't be if, plus the information we've looked at, they're like a Neolithic age, latter age, the Greeks speak of them a lot, all that sort of stuff. So the Assyrians predate them, yeah, and they probably have influenced the Egyptian hieroglyphs in some way. It's the key to translating those hieroglyphs through that Assyrian language. They're big contributors apparently to that language. So them being, what we found, them being exiled, enslaved in Egypt, i.e. the Exodus or the liberation, these peoples, these Jews, after, because 18 centuries of persecution, being called heretics, erroneously called the Nestorian Church, all this sort of stuff, were scattered, right? But they stuck to their religious practices, etc., that they were taught by, supposedly by the disciples of Jesus, who one of them found that church, their church, the Apostolic Church of the East, i.e. Adai, etc., etc., and gave them those these texts of what they saw Christ, what the disciples saw and heard Christ do, because they hung around for 3.5 years when he did that mission, his mission, in his day, right? So they were with him 24/7, 365. So as witnesses, they wrote everything down of what they heard and what they saw in regards to Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus Christ. And the Church of the East high priest, appointed high priest, had therefore preserved those manuscripts for over 2,000 years. And they're intact, as verified by the once head patriarch in 1957 of that church, Ma Isai Shimon, later assassinated by a Kurd in 1975 from his home, at his home. He stated it, the day they were given, that's how they've been left, right? They've never been messed with, tampered with, everything like that. They had no reason to translate them into any other language, because it's exclusively for the Apostolic Church of the East. The high priests spoke that language, spoke the modern vernacular, they spoke through their liturgy to the mass, who also were native born Assyrians or Syrians who knew the language, so they understood it. So why would they want to translate it into any other language, if it was exclusive? So we're going to look at this a little bit. We hopefully don't incur a copyright strike or copyright claim, whatever. It's just to verify from this guy's mouth, of this other guy, that apparently did all this research and made this claim.
The main part of the presentation, where I'm talking about Cymroglyphics, the word I've used to describe it, to show Cymro, the Welsh people, and the language. So, this all started with Wilson and Blackett in practice back in the 1990s. And it's an amazing book called Moses in the Hieroglyphs. And what they do there, they show how they worked out the language. It's brilliant. And people have read this and it's been amazing. They say, well, that's amazing, I wish I could do that. They don't really explain how you can do it, which is the difference with this book, Cymroglyphics, where you really can do it in hours. Because with Moses and the Hieroglyphs, a fantastic book, and what they do then, they show how you can take these hieroglyphs and read loads and loads and loads of the texts and the names, work out why the temples are there, all that kind of stuff. It's a great big book, and it's not the bit about how to read hieroglyphs is quite small, really. And once they've done Moses in the hieroglyphs, you can see how biblical characters appear, who all the pharaohs really were. They sort out the dynasties a lot. It's massive. And then the Trojan War book, which again uses hieroglyphs to read, who the main characters were, who was Menelaus, who was the two Helens, all this kind of stuff. So this one here, I'm going to show you now what I need you to do. I know this audience is great at doing this, is we have to try and somehow move out of our brain the fact that for 200 years a certain way has been attempted. Because as I'll show you in this, it's not very successful. And if you can try and imagine we're going back 200 years and the two alternatives are being presented at the same time, and then you decide which do you think works and makes the most sense. And within minutes you'll get the basic idea. It's that easy, honestly. Alright, so the basic principle, this is an example that Gardner put in one of his books. He's an Egyptologist. It's called the Rebus Principle. So what you do is you see a symbol and it's to do with what it sounds like, okay? It's all to do with the sound. So in this situation, we've got a B and a leaf. B, leaf, okay? B, leaf. Say them together, belief. You get belief, alright? That's how you represent it. So the actual symbols themselves don't look like the word, but they sound like the word, and this is the key. But the problem is, how can you know what a word sounds like, or what a bee sounds like, if you don't know the language, you don't know the correct word for that little insect you see on the screen there? You need to know the language to make it work, and this is the key. And if you go back, I should have welcomed you to the presentation. So it's a great example. How do you draw a hieroglyph for welcome? To welcome, you could draw some of the arms out, or whatever. You could try different things. But in Welsh, what you'll find is the word for welcome is croeso. You might have seen this if you've driven to Wales. You'll see the sign Croeso i Gymru, welcome to Wales, croeso. Now, fortunately, I think it's more than fortune, because the whole Welsh language, you have dual meanings of words. And it seems to be you've got one word you can draw, and one which it sounds like, which is the word you intend. I don't know, it's almost like the language was developed at the same time as the hieroglyphs. It works that well, as you will see. So, if we want to do croeso, we'll just draw croes. Croes is very easy to draw. And sure enough, the hieroglyph for welcome is a cross. So if you go to the dictionary in the back of the book, you'll see cross. Cross in Welsh is croes, gives croeso the intended word, welcome. So croeso pawb, welcome everybody. I don't speak Welsh, by the way, okay? You don't need to speak Welsh to do this. You just need an old Welsh dictionary, because some of the words have changed in the last couple of hundred years. It's quite sad in a way, because it seems the language is maintained, incredibly well for a long time before that. I won't go too much into the background of it, but I will mention, if you go back to the 1840s, look at linguists like von Bunsen, and he said all what he called Indo-European languages all share the same root from an ancient Assyrian language. And he looked at all of them, and he declared...
So they all share an ancient root from the original Assyrian language.
The place where it's least changed over time, as he put it, most jealously guarded, is in Wales, where there haven't been many invasions or movements of populations, that kind of stuff, apart from maybe from the Middle East, another issue. And it's a purest form, and it just works, okay? So don't dwell too long on that. Unfortunately, going back 200 years, these are the famous characters you might recognise from my drawings. On the left there, we have Sir Thomas Young, who was the English champion. He was promoting it from their side of things. He was the genius. He's a great scientist, medical person. He's the one who worked out how eyes can see colour. Incredible stuff, all right? There's laws and principles named after him. An absolute genius. So he was sort of brought in, or he volunteered to have a crack at it. And Champollion, the same famous Jean-Francois Champollion, revolutionary France, the guy who's supposed to have cracked the hieroglyphic code. Okay, their problem was they did not know what the language was. They wanted to use the rebus principle, but where do you go for it? Champollion had a dream when he was 11 years old. It was definitely Coptic. He became an expert, the best Coptic person of his era, and he decided it must be the language. That's how it was decided. You've got to remember, there was no Egyptology at the time. Champollion was the first chair of a university department, so he just came up with this by himself. So, got to bear these things in mind. So the very first symbol, which you might have seen many times on hieroglyphs that they came across, was this square, slightly rectangle sometimes. What on earth can that be? Fortunately, sometimes it appears like this. And fair play to them, they worked out this is a door. Or an entrance maybe, but it's a door, okay? So what they then had to do, I don't want to give the game away just yet, because you'll see in a minute, this word had to begin with a P sound, because they were working on phonetics, all right? And they decided that each of these hieroglyphs is a letter. This is the big problem. What you'll discover through this, each hieroglyph represents a word, and it's always the same word. All those complicated things you have to go through to try and learn hieroglyphs, forget all that. It's as a written language should work. Here's the word, just say it out loud, and what it sounds like is what you want, all right? So, they got this, they got the door. Can't find any word in Coptic beginning with P that represents a door. Champollion decides the Egyptians didn't have a word for door. So why draw a door if you don't have a word for it? So he found some Hebrew word for to open or something like that. And so that must be it. If maybe these days you might have driven down the M4 and seen a sign like this, and you can see Cardiff Gate Services, Gwasanaethau, that wonderful long word for services, and you see Porth. Porth means entrance. It can be door, it's an old Welsh word. People use drws for door now, but you see Porth. Very ancient word. For example, at Cardiff, the old harbour is Porth. So Porth might actually be the root of the English word port. Or they share a common root, let's put it that way, okay? So there's Porth. And the great thing is, using this rebus principle, when they draw a door, they're not really talking about a door. Why have they put a door? Well, door, Porth, the root por, means supreme one, or sovereign. So when you see that, that's it. Now learn two hieroglyphs. You learn the cross is welcome, and the door, or the square, is supreme one. Now quite often this comes with this one just below it, this sort of semicircle there. It can be filled in sometimes, that's just chiseling or painting, doesn't seem to matter. So they then had to work this one out, and they had a good idea. This was a T sound, for reasons you'll see. So they had to think, how on earth? And they did work out it was a cake, which I think is very impressive. They worked out this was a cake. Look in your standard books, this is a cake. But they couldn't find a T word for cake. So the first two symbols they've ever tried, and they're already stuck, all right? But anyway, it remains persevering with Coptic, Aramaic, with all these things. Didn't think, let's try Welsh, because, and here's my lovely wife, with a beautiful, what's called a tissue in the lap. Still made in Wales, a traditional Welsh cake. You can see the shape. There's the semicircle, titian, T. So once again, T means you are in Welsh, oiti or something, what are you, this kind of thing. So you are. Okay, so the first two symbols you see together a lot in hieroglyphics. You see the square and the semicircle, or the door and the cake. And what we know, because they're words, is that it means supreme one, you are. Hang on a second, why didn't they write you are the supreme one? Well, this is another clue, because this is Welsh-style syntax. So a Welsh person, you might hear them say, instead of saying, for example, "you are a good boy," they would say, "oh, there's a good boy you are," because that's Welsh syntax, that's the word order, okay? Think of Yoda. If you're having trouble thinking of it, think how Yoda speaks, alright? So Yoda might say something like this: "Hieroglyphics read you can, when book read you have." That's Welsh syntax. Why on earth Yoda uses Welsh syntax, I have no idea. There we are. You make a pretty good winger, I'd imagine, although he was a little bit small. Okay, so
probably because Steven Spielberg is Jewish, right? And if this guy is saying that the Welsh has Assyrian roots or so forth, then that's probably why.
Let's look at the meaning on the far right. So we've got supreme one you are, and then because they're words, obviously a string of hieroglyphs is a sentence. It's not some convoluted word you can't say, like NSWT, these amazing words you see coming from Egyptology. No, it's a sentence, right? So supreme one you are. So what we're going to do now is build a sentence. Might seem a bit random, but if the sharper people out there might notice why I'm choosing.
Okay, and probably the rest of the video is like that. Just jump ahead a little bit.
The swimming thing, one of my favourite ones, because it's still in use today. If you go to somewhere like Cardiff swimming pool, you will see that symbol on the door, and underneath it, they don't say water, it says novio, which is to swim or to float. And that's still, to this day, novio, right? So there we got, so the root of novio is no, which is to keep. So he keeps things in certainty, he looks after calmness. The next two, very important combination. Please remember these two, to see them again in a minute. So we've got the hand, threatening hand like this, durnio, which can mean to threaten, it can mean fist, it can mean strike. Da, so you've got da, durnio, and then the mouth, roch, to proclaim, to give orders, to proclaim, okay? And then we've got the sikrai is security or certainty, okay? Certainty. So rules with certainty. And the last two, if you look at my books and things, I use this as a logo, you can see that. Rossi, my name Rossi, so phonetically Rossi, and then speaks with certainty. How cool is that? You can have fun making up your own names, but once you know they're just acronyms, you can choose the words from the dictionary that make a nice sentence. Rossi speaks with certainty, right? Great. So they've got a reason for this. Now, one of the things I want you to notice straight away, which is a massive clue that they just missed 200 years ago. Now, you read the old records, you're like, oh, you're so close. They spotted that Alex is no X. And what the writers have had to do is use a K and an S, a cut sound. So Alex, which, so immediately when you're looking for which language is behind this, you should know there's nothing with an X in it. All languages with an X, gone. They don't have an X. Another language without an X is Welsh. This is a modern sign. Taxi. There's no X in Welsh, so it's spelled taxi. Cuts up exactly the same as it's done with Alexander. A lot of clues. There's loads of clues. You go through it in the book, examples, you know, the number of vowels and syntax and things like.
Okay, you're going to jump ahead again.
This endless long name. But I'll just draw that in. And you can see there we've got the snake around these three symbols. And I will come on to those in a few minutes. Just bear them in mind that they are on the Rosetta Stone. These are what's called titles. Now, by the way, reading from right to left this time because the lion is pointing to the right. So we go right to left this time, okay? They point towards the start of the sentence. Sentence is a sentence. Okay, so what we have here is a title or a prenom, it's called, which tells you something about the person. Some of them are outside the cartouches, some are inside. Okay, so the argument became then, because, as I said, this Thomas Young was an absolute genius. Loads of scientific things and medical things named after him. He's the problem solver of the day. And he worked out, fair play to him, very early on, said, look, he said, this system of writing letters in the cartouches does not work outside. It cannot work, and I cannot do this without the language. And he walked away from it. He said it's impossible without knowing the language. Champollion, I know the language. It's Coptic. I had it in a tree when I was 11. And so what Thomas Young said was that, hey, it might work inside for foreign names. It's a way of spelling foreign names. He was so close. See, if we just followed that a bit further, we would have got this 200 years ago. I think how much trouble would have been saved. He said it's just for foreign names. It doesn't work for the text. You can't read the text. Life you are of this place. You are life of this place. Not with a big snake around it. You are not life of this place. You are immortal. You're a god. And amazingly, the conventional Egyptologists have got really close to that without knowing any of the words, which I think is very impressive. Unfortunately, the rest of it bashed up. And I want to go back to the British Museum and try and take a better photograph, see if I can see it somewhere else. You can just about see the supreme one you are if you look closely. And then what it reads off the left, I'm not sure. Anyway, so there it is again. So not life you are of this place. You are not life of this place. You are immortal. Brilliant, isn't it? Here's another favourite of mine. You see this outside cartouches, see lots of places. You've got the sun and the goose. So sometimes you see it like this, sun and the goose. Some people think it's a duck, but there is a cartouche for a duck with a great big bill on it. It's very different, okay? And sometimes you see it like this. Oh, we'll also do this prenom quickly. Those four symbols you see, just make a mental note. Okay, I won't go through the cartouches again, I'm going to push for time a bit. But I was going to do this goose and sun. This is my favourite, because the word for sun in Welsh is Rael. That's a modern pronunciation, it's a North Walian thing really. It's a Ra. Ra. The Welsh word for sun is basically Ra. It's become a Ral, it's Ra. It's the same word. How amazing is that? And as we saw earlier, with the dual meanings of Welsh words, Ra means the power, the supreme one. And of course there's all these connections with the sun and God and all that kind of thing, alright? And goose is gwith. Gwith. Gwith, another dual meaning word. Gwith also means knowledge or present. So this would mean in the presence of the supreme power, or in the presence of the power. Isn't it wonderful? It gets even better. Put them to...
So, in some, if the Assyrians were, or i.e. the Jews, were these Hyksos that were in Egypt, then perhaps to understand their enslavers, they had to learn, adopt, and understand the Egyptian language at that time, if there was an Egyptian language at the time. Obviously, it would have been something there. So, when they were liberated, went through in the desert of Sinai, etc., Moses and so forth, and then eventually were scattered. The Assyrians were scattered, being labelled heretics, etc., under threat, being banished, executed, martyred, given a hard time for so many centuries. They've spread out across the world, and they've probably migrated to England and then to Wales, etc. Right? So their particular language, the original ancient Assyrian, very old Assyrian, has gone there with them, okay, and probably intermixing with the Britons, or the Welsh rather, that were there, or somebody else that was there. Their language became these people's language. They took on that language, right? Or they intermingled, and these people who eventually became the Welsh had taken on that Assyrian language, which the Assyrian language, being the people enslaved in Egypt, probably...
Okay, I found this on the web for slaves in Egypt. Check it out.
Okay, Siri, you're interrupting. I didn't call for you, so we're going to turn you off. Okay, okay, Siri wants the button. There's a phone next to us. We're going to turn her off, or at least turn her down. That might be better. Okay, I might actually turn her off. Yeah, so where were we? Yeah, so these Assyrians escaping, migrating to Wales, with that land at the time, their language would have spread or intermingled with the people that were there. You understand where we're coming from? So that's because you lost the track. They were influenced in Egypt to the Egyptian alphabet and possibly the language, and then they liberated and they migrated across lands, end up in Britain, Wales, etc. And in Wales their language became the dominant by the looks of it. Yeah, we're sort of making an assumption from watching this video. We're not too sure exactly how to word it. Perhaps you can watch this video and this guy will explain it better, but we basically saw this video and thought, oh, okay, so Welsh has got roots in the Assyrian language, the original ancient, very old Assyrian language, which had an influence on the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And this person mentioned by this guy in this particular video is the one, or several of them, who discovered it and then revealed it, that Welsh is actually a root of the old Assyrian. I wonder what the actual Assyrian people, native born Aramaic or Assyrian speaking people, would be thinking of this video. They'd probably say, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, we could verify that or disprove it. Yeah, it'd be interesting. So we should just go watch this particular video. We'll leave the link to it below this video. You may find it very, very interesting as an Assyrian or someone who's into the Assyrian histories, the religion, as we are, etc, etc. So subscribe to our channel, give us a like if that's really interesting to you and you like it. Give us a like and add your comments below this video, comment section, and then go share this with all your family and friends, neighbours, etc. You may know somebody who's actually Welsh born, and they may be able to verify this for you, and they may be able to teach you their language, etc. And you may, somehow compare it with the Assyrian and go, wow, it's very, very close to the Assyrian and the Egyptian. There's some influence there, and so forth. Yeah, so don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, add your comments below the video, and then go share this with your family, friends, and others.